Sorry, now we're good.
All
Not
right,
like last week.
Thank you. Okay, good talk. Sorry for that delay. Okay, so tonight we're going to do mostly Hilchos Purim. First of all, we're going to have to, once we change the clocks, that is Hashem, in I don't know when, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, we're going to have a change of schedule because Motzei Shabbos is not going to work. So also I know some women complain that this is not such a good time. Obviously, no time is always good for everybody. So we'll try and make it work for everybody. So if anybody could post we have to try and make some sort of chat or email that Mrs. Jacobs is going to take care of. So if everybody can just post their email address into the chat on the Zoom, and then we'll get an email of everybody, and we'll make some sort of way that we could all communicate. And anybody has any questions, ha'aras or whatever it is, so you can just please post throughout this year your email or phone number or both. I'm not sure exactly which one it is. Some way we can communicate, and then that'll make things easier.
Yago, if they don't feel comfortable posting it to everybody, they can post it directly to the daf.
What do you mean directly to the daf?
Not to everyone. Send it in the message box to me.
Oh, you can do separate to you?
You can do separate private text to you don't have to send it to everyone.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. How do you do that?
In the chat box, you could say chat to everyone or chat to different people that are on.
Oh, I see. On the bottom of the chat, when you press chat, then it pops up send to. On the bottom it says send to everyone, or you can send to the daf, the host. The host is the daf. You can send directly to the daf if you don't want everybody to have your email address or phone number. Okay. Fine. Now, I don't know if anybody has something that they want to discuss or want me to discuss with Hilchos Purim, so please post it. Please post it on the chat what you'd like to discuss, and we'll try and do that. Try and get to it. Okay, so also last week's was not recorded, so I don't remember. I said I would just review some of the things we learned last week with Purim. The problem is that I don't remember exactly what was discussed. I know we said that if you want to separate silverware, so you can't just, if you want to set the table Friday night and you have a whole handful of silverware, you can't lay it out that way. You have to just drop it, and then you'll be able, and as if it becomes separate pieces, then you're able to, it's no longer butter, and you'll be able to do that. I think we also discussed, we discussed taking good from the bad, that how you have to be careful to make sure to take the good from the bad, like when you're taking grapes from the stems or cherries from the stems. So then you have to make sure you pull the cherry, which is the good, away from the stem, not the stem away from the cherry. Obviously there was more, but I don't remember now. I apologize about that. And also another reason why people can post their emails, then we can send out notes on these shiur, my own personal notes, ones that are understandable, and it might help people out. Okay, so now with Purim. So first, let's just discuss Parshas Zachor for those that didn't make it because the weather was bad. Me'ikar hadin, we paskin that women do not have to hear Parshas Zachor. That's the way. In the old days, there were none of these second lanings for women in the afternoon. It's not simple a halacha that you're allowed to just take out a sefer Torah just for a private person or private women, whoever it is, to take it out. So in the old days, from what I understand, the women did not, if they could make it the shul, good. If they didn't, then they didn't. But nowadays it's become more accepted. But obviously with Corona, et cetera, if a woman can't hear Parshas Zachor, that's fine. You also have in the summer, you have the summer that you could hear it. If you go to shul when they lane it in the summer, certainly there are many poskim that say you could hear Kriyas HaTorah before the Megillah is laned. right before Megillah, and we're laying the Torah on Shul and Purim morning. That parsha is not about women, not about Yidden destroying Amalekim, but it's the story of when Amalekim attacked us. And Magen Avraham says that's also good enough. So you could do that. You could also read it from a Chumash, and that's enough. That's enough. So women don't have to make themselves crazy to hear Parsha Zachor. On the other hand, Megillah, since women were just the same way the women were part of the Nes, so therefore they are required to hear Megillah. Now, what's going on with Zoom? Let's just explain that just for a short while, because hopefully it's not so negaya. But if you want, okay, we'll get back to the butter question soon. Okay, so but if you're homebound, can you listen to Megillas Esther on the phone or any mitzvah on the phone or on Zoom? So first of all, if you hear somebody making a bracha live, if it's a recording, that doesn't work. There's no opinion live. Can you be yotze? If you hear it live, can you be yotze? So I don't know. It's over there somewhere. Sorry. So I just got back home from Shabbos, so it's a little hectic here. I apologize. So the question is to be yotze. So basically what it's contingent on is when you have a chazan that's on the other side of the room and you're far away, can you actually hear? Are you hearing his voice? Or are you hearing the sound waves from his voice? Right? Those that allow microphones and or phones and Zoom, etc. They say that the same way the sound waves carry the voice of the person, so to the airwaves and so to the internet. It's just the sound waves is not the actual voice that you're hearing. You're hearing the voice magnified. And magnified is not really the right word. Amplified by the sound waves that are in the air. So why not the same waves through a phone line? That's why there are those that are lenient with this. The Ma'aseh, Rav Moshe Feinstein says b'shas hatchak. It's b'shas hatchak. It's allowed. B'shas hatchak it would be allowed, but b'shas hatchak means that really no other option. For example, a woman is in the hospital, Motzei Shabbos, and she can't make havdalah for herself. So then we would allow somebody to make havdalah over the phone, but it's got to be a very desperate situation where a woman can't make havdalah for herself, right? That's just a rumor about the women not drinking havdalah. It's not a rumor, but it's not halacha. That's for sure. Women can make havdalah and drink havdalah, and that's what they would have to do. So same thing with Megillah. Really, a woman should have to learn the Megillah by herself, if necessary. But obviously that takes a lot of practice. So that's why Baruch Hashem we have Bali Chesed around that will go around and we'll read the Megillah. Push comes to shove, if somebody really doesn't have a choice, then yes, they would be able to hear it on Zoom, as long as there's no delay. If it's a delay, meaning you have to have a very good internet connection. If there's a delay, then you are allowed to be Yotze, Kriyas Megillah like that. If you hear somebody making a bracha, stam, this is just parenthetical, if you hear somebody making a bracha, then you are allowed to answer Amen, as long as there's not much of a delay. This was during the Siyam Shas. Many people were listening online. They want to know if they could answer Amen, etc., etc. That is allowed, as long as there's no delay. Okay, so hopefully nobody would ever need this, but it's really shas hatchak to allow listening to the Megillah on Zoom or on the phone. Now, if a husband and wife are stuck at home alone, this has come up a few times, and he has a Megillah. So now a simple eitzah in order to be able to learn the Megillah is what you do is you put on headphones and have a recording of somebody reading the Megillah in your ear. This works for man or for woman. And then you put it on slow. And as they learn the Megillah, you just repeat after them. But you have to make sure you say it loud enough that you hear it for yourself. Right? Or the man says it out loud, what he hears in his ear, and that would work. But the reason why it needs to be in his ear is because if it's playing out loud and he reads along, then there's a rule that says two voices are not heard. If two voices at the same time, you can't really tell which voice is what. So therefore that doesn't work. But if he has it in a headphone, so the person listening won't hear the voice on the recording, and then that will work. Okay, I never tried it myself, but there are people that have tried it. Okay, so that's basically for Megillah. Now, as another halacha that women have to be aware of, which is, well, first of all, before we do Megillah, let's start with Tainus Esther. So Tainus Esther is the most lenient of all the fasts. So, and the basic rule with fasting is that if you're not able to function to your normal capabilities, then you don't have to fast, especially for Tainus Esther, and Tainus Esther is a busy time. So if somebody gets weaker than normal, then they can break the fast. You have to be able to function normal, and then obviously you're welcome to ask a shaila, but you have to be able to function normal. So now here's what the problem is that a lot of times the women will go to the second Megillah learning, and there's a halacha that you're not allowed to eat before you hear the Megillah. So what do women do about breaking the fast? So what they can do, and this goes for men too, is if you're in pain, et cetera, and you think you're not going to be able to function, so you can break the fast, but don't eat too much. Drink is okay, drink as much as you want. Coffees, water, whatever it is. But eating, you should certainly not supposed to wash. That's for sure not. And you shouldn't have a lot of bread. So fruits is also okay. Fruits, vegetables, those type of things are okay. But not a lot of mezainis, not more than an egg's worth of mezainis. So, but you are allowed to eat before the fast, before the Megillah Esther. In the morning also, really during the day also, it's not preferred to eat before Megillah, because then when there's a mitzvah to be done, you're supposed to take care of that mitzvah. Again, don't make yourself crazy. Just don't sit down to a big meal before you've heard Megillah. That's the main thing. Snacking would be okay. Fine. So that's that. Now, what age do kids need to hear the Megillah? That was, I think, something somebody just posted that. What age do kids need to hear the Megillah? So only once they start understanding and they can understand what Megillah reading is. When they understand what Megillah reading is, then they would be required to hear Megillah. But certainly, if they're not old enough to sit quietly for a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever the length of Megillah is, then you don't take them to shul. That's for sure. So it's basically depending on the maturity of the kid. I would say for sure not before the age of 7. I'd really say not before the age of 15, 16, but obviously you can't say that. But that's what it is. But that's basically what it is. One of the reasons that say that there's 4 psukim that we say out loud is to make sure the kids are paying attention, sort of like to wake up the kids. Also, something to say to banging the Haman is to make sure that the kids are paying attention. So there definitely is a inyan for kids to hear the Megillah. But again, they got to make sure that they could sit properly. If they don't sit properly, that's just going to disturb it for many people. Okay. If there's any questions on Megillah. Now, also, if you come late to Megillah, and they already started, so you can quickly make the bracha and the shechiyanu, and then you could catch up. You're allowed to read up to half the Megillah can be read by heart. So reading it from a chumash is not bad. So basically what you do, you come a little late. That doesn't mean you have to wait for the next minyan or go find another one. Just make the bracha. And obviously you can't say mikra Megillah, you say listen to the Megillah, and then you catch up. You read it yourself and you catch up to wherever the chazan is, and then you continue from there. Obviously, if they're near the halfway point, then you should go find another minyan. And the same thing is if you spaced out a little bit, or you might have missed a word, or this and that, then you just read that sentence that you're not sure about, and then you can just continue. You continue on. Okay, fine. Now with let's start with Mishlach Manos. Okay, one second. There's a question here. No, see, it's not appointing a shomer doesn't help from beginning. It makes it better. You certainly would have to point the shomer anyways if you're going to eat, but appointing a shomer does not help for this, because there's two reasons. One, we were afraid you're going to forget, and one is because you have the mitzvah to do a mitzvah. You're not supposed to eat before you do a mitzvah. So really, those are the two reasons. So the shomer will help for one, but won't help for the other, right? So therefore, it's not preferred. But again, if you need to eat in order to be able to concentrate on listening to the Megillah, then you do eat. Just try and stay away from a lot of cake. It's pretty manageable, I think. Fruit, vegetables, coffee should be enough to get most people through. If you have more of a problem, so then ask. So then obviously ask a shayla, and then you see how you go from there. Okay. Fine. Now, during the day, thank you. During the day, so it's an interesting halacha. We don't make a shechiyanu on any of the brachas on any of the mitzvahs of the day, meaning shalach manas, matanas levyanim, sudas purim. We don't make the bracha on that. So what we do is we make, when there's a shechiyanu from the chazan, when you hear by Megillah reading, then you have in mind that it's going to cover you for the mitzvahs. Okay, so but it's interesting, just an interesting din that the Mishnah Brura, when he discusses that you have it in mind, he says you have to have in mind the Sudas Purim, and you have to have in mind Mashla. He doesn't say anything about Matanas of Yonim. And the reason for that is because Matanas of Yonim is presents for the poor. How can somebody make a shechiyanu that he's happy? What does shechiyanu mean? Shechiyanu means that you're happy that you lived another year to get to this Yom Tov. You can't make a shechiyanu that you're happy to see more poor people. Right? So therefore, that's why he doesn't bring that you make shechiyanu for that. Okay, so that's just an interesting thing. It's also a reason why we don't make a bracha on Amalek. Amalek is even a mitzvah from the Torah. Why don't we make a bracha? That was my halacha text tonight. Now, why don't we make a bracha on that? We have to remember what Amalek did to us, and the reason for that is because you can't make a bracha when Hashem's creations are getting destroyed, or when it's a mitzvah to destroy them, even though we have to, because that's what Hashem said. But that's not something that we make a bracha over, right? So we don't make brachas when people are having negative things. Right. Okay. So now, so if women are by a woman's laning, does everyone make a bracha or not? So there's a lot of dispute about that. If it's less than 10 women, then each woman. This is what I go with. It's like a middle of the road opinions. Again, there's varying opinions. So you may hear from one minion of women did one way and one did another way. But the basic way is if it's less than 10 women, then each woman should make the brachas themselves. If the man never heard laning before, then of course he should make the bracha because he has to make the bracha anyways and have everybody in mind. If there's more than 10 women, then one woman should say it out loud on behalf of all the other women. There is an inyan of listening to Megillah with more people. So if you have a choice of going to a shul with a small amount of people or a large amount of people, then going to a shul with a large amount of people is better. And the same thing with women's minyanim. Again, you don't have to go. Take a survey of how many women are going to which minyan when you're deciding, but there is an inyan to have even if it's not a minyan and shul, it's the inyan to have more people, because roiv am hadras melech, the more people you have, the bigger hiddur it is for Hashem. Okay, so that's basically that for the Megillah. Okay, so this year the big question that everybody's asking is when do you make the Sudas Purim? And the reason for this is because it's Friday. Friday, really, we're not allowed to make big meals on a Friday, and the reason for that is because if we go into Shabbos when we're full, it's a lack of kavod Shabbos, it's a lack of respect for Shabbos. So there's a bunch of different opinions of what to do. The most preferred is to start the Suda before Chatzos, which is around 12:10 in New York, give or take. So it's best to start before then. And but here's the thing: what I think people are getting a little confused with. This is not like that's like the end time. It's the point is that you're not supposed to be full when you go into Shabbos. So even if you wash, let's say you wash at 9 o'clock in the morning and you make a Suda, which many people have the minhag. I personally have that minhag. On every Purim, I wash twice, once in the morning and once later in the afternoon. But even if you wash in the morning and then you bench, but then then you go around at 3-4 o'clock to people's Purim Sudas and you eat meat and you eat all sorts of food and you're still stuffed. That's also not a respect. It's not covered for Shabbos to come into the meal full. The point is to come into Shabbos with some sort of hunger for the Shabbos meal. So you're not it's even if you wash early and you end up eating a whole afternoon, it sort of defeats the purpose. Okay, but that being said, the bottom line is the best is to wash before Chatzos. If you can't wash before Chatzos, then and certainly don't. If you're eating by somebody's house for the meal and they say they're washing at 2-3 o'clock, it's fine. Up until 3:30 it's really fine to wash up until 3:30. After 3:30 is not so simple. There is something called Paris Map on the Kaddish. I don't know if anybody's heard that. It's very rare that you have a situation that you could have this. Paris Map on Kaddish basically means that you're in the middle of a meal and then it hits Shkia. Now, once it hits Shkia, you're not allowed to eat. Sort of the same reason why you're not supposed to eat before Purim, before hearing the Megillah, right? So you're not supposed to eat. So Shabbos also, you're not supposed to eat. You're not allowed to eat till you make Kiddush, but you're in the middle of a meal. So what you do is you cover over the challah or bread, and then you just take out a cup of wine, and you just make Kiddush without saying B'arei Pri Hagafen, because you already made B'arei Pri Hagafen, and you don't even have to make a Hamaitzi. And then you just drink the wine, and then you make Kiddush, and now you had your Suda. And then you're in the middle of your Shabbos Suda, and that's okay. And therefore, and that's it. And then you go on. You don't even need lechem mishnah. Most places say you don't even need lechem mishnah, but you should eat. You should make sure you eat some challah or some cake right after the Kiddush. So it's really a learning opportunity to do Paras Ma'am Makadosh because there's a lot of different halachas that get involved, but you have to make sure you know exactly what you're doing when you're going to try and do this. Obviously, there's really no reason that anybody should have to do it. If you get stuck in the middle of your meal, then you could do that. But best is just to wash earlier and then bench and then have a proper Friday night. But again, nothing to get stressed out. The main thing is to have Purim supposed to be a Yom Tif. It's right. It's Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim. It's like Purim. So Purim is a holy day. One thing for sure, no stress. No stress should be on Purim. The main thing is to be happy on Purim, happy that we received the Torah again, happy that we were saved. And there are halachic basis. There's halachic basis for everything. And whichever way, as long as everybody's happy and happy to be Jewish, happy to be a Yid, happy that we were saved, that's the main point of the day. There's also another halakha that many people who shouldn't forget is that there's a mitzvah to take a hot shower on Erev Shabbos. And with all the Purim and running around, it's not, I imagine many people are going to forget about that mitzvah. I'm not exactly sure when that can, if you make your Suda that late, so I guess you could shower before that or shower in the morning, but there is a mitzvah to shower with hot before Shabbos. Okay, so a few questions here. Is there any point of children coming for part of the laning? From the mitzvah standpoint, no. From chinuch that you want them to experience it a little bit, that's fine. But as long as they don't disturb people when they come in and out. I would say maybe if they don't have the patience to sit through the whole thing, then stand in the hallway and let them look through the windows. And if your shul doesn't have that, then go to a different shul and let them see that way. But if it's going to disturb people when they come in and out, then it's certainly better not to do that. So if you have a minute for two sudas, do you need to wash both of them before chatzos? If you want to do it the best, then yes. But I would say that you have to make sure that you have enough break between the first Suda and the second Suda. Right? If you don't have it, if you're just gonna wash and then bench and then wash again, then that's a bracha she'eina tzricha. So that's not allowed. Right? Yeah. So what bracha to make on the Megillah is really also a big disagreement of what you do. You can basically say the bracha that's in the siddur, whichever siddur that you have, because either way you go with it, it's gonna be fine. I would say likros would be just the best way to say it. The regular standard bracha is the easiest way to go about doing it, the least confusing way. Okay, fine. So now another question is, why don't we make a bracha on Mishloach Manos and Matanos L'Yomim? Right? It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Why don't we make a bracha? So some say the reason why you don't make a bracha is because it's ben adam l'chaver. We don't make a bracha. Like tzedakah, we don't make a bracha either. Right? The other reason is because you're giving something shalach manos. Let's say they refuse it. Let's say you make a bracha on shalach manos and you bring it to them and they say, "Oh, I don't like your shalach manos, so I don't want it." Now you just made a bracha levatala. I mean, that would not be very Purim-like thing to do, but in case that happens, let's say you want to give somebody tzedakah and you're going to make the bracha, and then they say, "Oh, I don't want you tzedakah." So that's why we don't make brachas on these things. Now let's discuss Mishloach Manos, because Purim is not necessarily a Yom Tif, as is Simchas Torah. It's not really a Yom Tif that's woman oriented, to say the least, right? Because although women do need to be part of all the mitzvahs, right? You need to make sure that, like when you're giving the matanas of yonim, so we say $4 or $5 is good enough for matanas of yonim, but that's for a couple. That's not enough. You need to give $4 or $5 for the husband and for the wife and for any kids that are over bar mitzvah. It's not enough one. It's not enough just $5, right? So women are chayav in all the mitzvahs except for drinking. Even by men, it's unclear exactly how the halacha can allow all the drinking, which we won't get into. But for women, certainly it's not the proper thing. Can you drink a little bit of wine? That's fine. If you know you could hold your alcohol, then drinking a little bit is fine. But excessive drinking is not allowed by women. So therefore, that makes the whole day a little bit male-oriented. So the way women, rightfully so, are part of the mitzvah of Purim is by making shalach manos, making something nice and sending to friends, right? And although sometimes the men get a little frustrated by saying, what are we doing this for? It's just going in the garbage, right? So what I tell people, when I tell men that complain about that, I tell them, well, why don't you think about, all the men are busy getting different types of wines and different types of beers and schnapps and all that. Why don't we just say to the men, what's the point? It's just going to waste anyways, because many of the men, unfortunately, throw up. And what's the point? What goes inside? So, I mean, everybody has their hiddur for the Yom Tif, and women are entitled to have their hiddur for the Yom Tif too. And I'm not trying to make any sort of disagreements here, but it's a hiddur. That's the way women understand and celebrate the Yom Tif, and rightfully so. But we have to know the basis behind the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos and what other halachic requirements before making the Mishloach Manos, because we may not be yaitze. We may not be yaitze with the Mishloach Manos. So if we know the reasons, then it can answer a lot of the questions. Right? So just something also for the basic halacha is, and I don't know why it gets confusing just for the requirements. So basically the requirement for Mishloach Manos is 2 foods to 1 person. That's all you need for Mishloach Manos. Meaning, if you have a neighbor, so you take 2 foods and you give it to your neighbor, and your yaitze, your Mishloach Manos, that's it. You don't have to do more. 2 foods, 1 neighbor. For Matanos L'Yonim, it's the opposite. It's 1 meal to 2 people. So again, Mishloach Manos is 2 foods to 1 person. That's the requirement. Matanas Lavyanim is 1 food to 2 people. What?
You said
Matanas Lavyanim is 1 food to 2 people. You need, Avyanim is plural. You need to give it to 2 poor people. Again, Mishloach Manos is Mishloach Manos is portions. You're sending 2 portions. So it's 2 portions of food to 1 person. Matanas Lavyanim is 1 portion or a meal to 2 people. So somebody just posted, how is $5 considered a meal for 2 people? You don't have to go to a restaurant in order to provide this person with a meal or to a caterer. You can go to the grocery store and you can buy a bag of rolls for, let's say, $2-3, and or less than that, really. Well, that's a bag of rolls. So you want to get 2 rolls, right? A roll would be enough for a meal, a roll and a soda, or a roll, whatever. Use the imagination. So on from a grocery store, it's about $2, a couple of pieces of turkey, pastrami, put into a roll, and get a drink, a small drink. It doesn't have to be a 2-liter bottle. It can be a small bottle, or sometimes 2-liter bottles are even cheaper. Whatever it is, you can find it on sale, and you can just give that to 2 people. That's where that measurement comes in. Yeah, there are opinions that say that yes, it needs to be a real fancy proper meal. And according to those opinions, then you should really give $20. Well, you should really give $20, but that's not the way we pass. When we pass, it's a basic meal to give to poor people. The halacha does say that it's better to spend more money on tzedakah matanas lavyanim than to spend on mishloach manos. That the halacha very clearly states. So if you really want to go with the basic halacha is give 1 mishloach manos to somebody, and then expend the rest on matanas lavyanim. But like we said, it's a mitzvah of a day for people to be happy, men, women, and women sharing with others. The Baruch Hashem Nashim Tzidkanias, they want to share with others, they want to make people happy. So that's part of their mitzvah. So no problem going to spending more on the Mishloach Manos, but obviously within reason. So before we start with the reason for Mishloach Manos, so the best way to do Mishloach Manos is give 1 person something respectable. Meaning, if you want to give candies and shtick, that's all great. But if you want to make sure you go to the mitzvah properly, make sure you give a proper Mishloach Manos with 2 types of foods that the person is going to be happy receiving. And do that to at least 1 person. And then everything after that, you could do whatever you want, right? Because like we said, Mishloach Manos is just 2 foods to 1 person. So just make sure you give 1 basic one, and then after that, all the shticks or whatever it is, which is fine, and it's a wonderful mitzvah, makes people happy. But the main thing is to at least be yotza, just give something chashuv to somebody, even if it's a family member, not an immediate family member, but it can be a parent, a sibling, whatever it is. Right? Fine. Okay. Well, Matzah Shekel we'll get to. I should have done that before. And for COVID, if you want to go to a smaller minyan because of COVID, I'm sorry, we're jumping out of order. Just want to make sure I don't forget the question. If you want to go to a smaller minyan there because of COVID, then that's fine. That is fine. Nobody should put their life in danger. It's just a hiddur. It's just better to go to a larger minyan. Certainly don't do something that's going to make you feel uncomfortable, or go to a minyan without masks, etc. If you feel that you should have masks, whatever your doctor says, fine. Yeah, so now, yes, please, I said this last week and I'll say it again, shout it from the rooftops. Mishloach Manos does not have to be 2 brachas. For the life of me, I discussed it with many rabbis, nobody has any idea where that came from. Shalach Manos, 1 bracha is fine. You can give a piece of chicken and a piece of meat, or 1 type of cake and another type of cake, or even a chocolate cookie and a vanilla cookie. Those are 2 different types. Those are all fine. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll break that down. But 2 brachas is an absolute non-necessity. I have no idea where that came from. Okay. Yeah. So somebody asked about matanas lavyanim. How does giving the poor people enough time to buy the food for the meal? That's an excellent question. The assumption is that they know the aniyim. If they know that they're going to get the money, then they buy on credit, or meaning if they know, and most aniyim know when they're going to be getting the money, so then it gives them a yishuv adas, and even if they do, we try and give them the money early in the morning also, so theoretically they can go get it. But the way it works nowadays in our society, in the old society, that's actually it was more of a question. Now today's society, people have credit cards, they have balances in the grocery stores, et cetera, et cetera. So this just gives them a happiness that things are being taken care of. Also, we give a lot of matanas of yonim out to. It's a lot more money. Most aniyim Baruch Hashem are going to be getting a lot more money than they need just for Purim, and that's part of it. That's to make them happy, right? To make them happy, and that's what the day is all about. The main point of Purim is that when we're happy, just having our own personal happiness doesn't work if there are other people that are unhappy. So we try and make everybody as happy as we can. Fine. So that's that. So now what is the point of Mishloach Manos? So we know to make people happy. But there's two opinions. There's two opinions why we give Mishloach Manos. Not why. We know why. That's to share our happiness with others. But what's the requirement of Mishloach Manos? One is the Trumas Hadeshin. He was a Rishon, so around 1,000 years ago. He said that Mishloach Manos has to be something that they're going to use for the meal for Purim. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that everybody, and it has nothing to do with wealthy or poor, you want to make sure that everybody, some sort of equality on Purim, that everybody has something nice for the Sudas Purim. So according to his opinion, it's something that has to be to be eaten on Purim, and that's going to make them happy. The Manas Halevi, it was later, but his opinion was that it's just to add friendship. So again, two opinions. One is that it's supposed to be food for Purim, to be used on Purim, and the other one is just to add friendship. There are many, many differences if you go, depending on what you go with this opinion. Which opinion you go with, right? Let's say the person you give it to turns it down, like we discussed before, which hopefully that won't happen, but let's say they turn it down. Or it doesn't have to be for a bad reason they turn it down. Let's say they say, you know what, I'm going out of town for Shabbos this year. Let's say I'm going to Brooklyn for Shabbos, and you're going to leave it here. I don't have room in my car, so just take it back. Where you yotze your mitzvah? So if it's for Sudas Purim, you weren't yotze your mitzvah because they're not using it for the Sudas Purim, right? And they're not even happy about it. But if it's for friendship, that shows friendship. They're happy. You tried to attempt to give them something. So that would be, again, the one that says it should be for the Suda, you may not have been Yotze your mitzvah, but if it's for somebody to add friendship, with the opinion to add friendship, then you're okay. Let's say you send Mishloach Manos anonymously. That's not adding friendship because the person has no idea who you are. So how does that add friendship? But if it's just to make sure the person has food for his Purim Suda, then you'd be Yotze, right? Let's say your family sends to somebody, let's say you're out delivering Shalach Manos, somebody comes to the door and gives them something without you knowing about it. So if it's for friendship, that wasn't you adding friendship to it, but if it's to provide them with something to eat on Purim, then that's okay. How about non-food items? Let's say you decide to give a present on Purim. So if you go that it adds friendship, so then that's fine. You can give presents too, right? But if it's for that the main reason is to provide food, then it's very nice you bought them a present, but it's not food, so you want to be yotze, right? So now, those are some of the differences. Let's say somebody doesn't eat Chol Yisrael, or somebody eats Chol Yisrael, and you give them something not Chol Yisrael. So for friendship, I don't know, maybe that doesn't add friendship. I don't know. Tread lightly on that one. But or like you give them from a restaurant that they don't eat it or something like that. So for friendship, you added friendship, but if they're not going to eat it, then that's not something that you would be yotze with. So the point is to be yotze, make sure you give one Mishloach Manos that actually meets these requirements. Now, how chashuv of the food does it have to be? Right? So If it's for friendship, so then it has to be something that's gonna actually cause friendship. Meaning, if you go to somebody who doesn't particularly care, you give a kid a candy bar and a lollipop, the kid will be very happy. You give it to an adult, they're gonna say, what kind of mishloach manos is that? Unless it's a shtick. If it's a shtick type thing, and they're gonna enjoy it because of the shtick, then fine. But if it's, you go to to an adult and give them a lollipop and a chocolate bar, maybe a chocolate bar they like, but a lollipop and a candy, that's not gonna do anything for anybody, right? So make sure you send something proper to at least one person. Drinks are allowed. Drinks works, not water. Water is not considered chashuv enough. It has to be something chashuv. So a bottle of water doesn't work. Some say that even seltzer doesn't work. Also, it should be ready-made, that the person does not have to prepare it. So giving a big slab of raw meat, which can be nice, a nice gesture, but if that's the only shalamonas that you're sending out, then raw meat don't do that. Make sure you give at least something cooked. Same thing with coffee. Can you give, a lot of people like to put coffee in with the mishloach manos. So if so, then if that's that the place can say is okay, because the coffee, you just put it into hot water and it goes pretty fast. It doesn't require that much work. Seltzer. Okay, so we discussed seltzer. Flavored seltzer, I would say flavored seltzer is okay. Soda for sure is okay. Juices is for sure okay. Wine is certainly okay, right? So that's basically that. I think we covered that pretty good. I mean, another difference is that many people send in mishloach manos before Purim. So if you send mishloach manos before Purim, then if they're going to eat it on Purim, you'd get the mitzvah according to that opinion, because you provided, according to the first opinion, because you provided them with food for their Purim Suda. If it's for friendship, you're supposed to have the friendship on Purim. You didn't give it on Purim, so maybe according to that opinion, it wouldn't work. Okay, but that's not okay. I imagine most people are going to be giving a proper amount. Fancy water, again, if it's something that the person is going to feel happy with, then I would say the fancy water is okay. If they're not going to be happy with that, then it's not really okay. Fine. Now the shlichus. So many say that you're supposed to give it because it says mishloach manos, so therefore you should use a shliach. That's a minority opinion, which many people get carried away with. Oh, give it to somebody. They hand it to somebody to give it to somebody else. It's not required. It's not required, and some say it's the opposite. We know that there's a rule that better you do the mitzvah than to have your agent do the mitzvah. So therefore, many say to give it yourself. So what I would say is make sure that you do at least one mishloach manos you hand over by yourself, and then what goes on after that is really doesn't make any difference. Okay. What else? What else should we discuss here with Purim? Let me check the questions.
Shalom.
Okay, so going back with the part. Okay, somebody just texted about Paras Map. Is it better to bench? I'd say the best thing would be the bench, daven, Kabbalah, Shabbos, and Ma'ariv, and then wash again. But to bench and then wash right away, obviously you can't do that anyways. You should daven Ma'ariv first, even though you don't have to daven Ma'ariv before making Kiddush. But if you're going to bench and then immediately start a meal right after that, you gotta have a good break in between. Either take a walk, go out, or daven, etc., etc. So be careful with that, because you don't want to make brachos for no reason. Machzas a shekel. So the minhag has become that women do give machzas a shekel. Machzas a shekel we say is $1.50. It's $3.50. It goes with half of whatever the normal coin amount. So $1 in America is the regular currency that's used. So half of that is the half a dollar basically whoever's going to be giving it on your behalf. So what they do is nobody has $50. So the shuls have $50, and a lot of them take together $3 and then you put in the money and you lift up the $50, which means that you acquire them, and then you put them down, and then that's and then the next person goes and takes them, and that's how we work it with the $50. Yeah, fine. What else? Okay, I don't think we have to get into how you have to daven. How can you daven? Can you say Birchas Hamazon if people are drunk? It's not really your. I guess it's not really your problem if people are davening. If people are davening when they're drunk, it's not the woman's issue. So does a woman need to give Mishloach Manos herself? No. But somebody should have everybody in mind. Somebody should have everybody in mind that it's for the couple and for the kids. Right? Okay, the truth is, kids over bar mitzvah, girls and boys over bar bas mitzvah, you got to make sure that they give Mishloach Manos, because if it's just from the family, so if you have them in mind, then that's fine. But if you don't have them in mind, then they should make sure they give on their own. Right? So make sure they take some food and give it over to somebody. At least give it over to one person. Oh, that was something I forgot. So there are some say that when you receive Mishloach Manos, you should look through to see who it came from. Don't just push it off and say, because obviously people are juggling Mishloach Manos and taking from one and putting to the other. Make sure you see who it comes from, because that creates friendship. That's part of it. That you want to create friendship. So if you know who gave it to you, say, oh, that's so nice, they gave me Mishloach Manos. Obviously, don't be offended, especially this year. Nobody should get offended that they didn't receive Mishloach Manos from this one, from that one. It's a busy time, and realize that not everybody can get to everybody, and to take it and to start having tainas on people would be the opposite of what we're supposed to be trying to accomplish on Purim. If you know that if you're going to look through all of them and you're going to start thinking, oh, this one didn't give me, this one didn't, so then don't look, and then you have no idea. Then have somebody go through and take out all the cards or whatever it is, and don't look, and then you won't know who gave you, who didn't give you. But that wouldn't be the proper thing to do. Oh, so work, right? Working on, especially this year that it's a Friday. So melacha, like for cooking, for Shabbos, that's all allowed. Really, melacha is allowed on Purim, right? It's better not to work, and the Shulchan Aruch says that you don't get a bracha if you work on Purim, but you could definitely ask a non-Jew to work for you. Construction is really not preferred, even if it's done by goyim. Construction is not preferred on Purim, right? And you also shouldn't be taking sewing or these type of things for after Purim. If it's for Shabbos, fine, but if it's for the next week or for whatever it is, then those type of melachos should not be done, because it's Purim and it's a Yom Tov. But it's not the same din as doing melacha on Yom Tov and on Shabbos, but it is there is a chashivas to it. So you shouldn't do melacha unless it's obviously driving, writing down things, writing lists. That's all fine, but more than that shouldn't be done. No, so if your husband is giving for the wife for Mishloach Manos, so if there's enough, meaning if it's considerable, then meaning there's enough food in there for two people to give to somebody, then you don't need to give an extra one. If it's small, like a chocolate bar and a single serving of cake or something like that, then you should give two, one from the husband, one from the wife. If you want to give one with a shliach, that's fine. If you want to be makayim it that way, yes, that's fine. Yes, husbands do masas shekel for the wife. I mean, or anybody can do it. She does not need to appoint them, nor does the wife need to appoint the husband to do matanas avyanim. Like we said before, matanas avyanim, you got to make sure is matanas avyanim is for each and every person over bar mitzvah in the household. So, but as long as the husband gives on their behalf, you don't have to make sure to appoint him as a shliach for you. Purim night. Oh, somebody asked about was there anything we should do? Think Purim night. Purim night, there is an Indian to make a seudah, but many poskim say that the seudah should be dairy, not meat. Oh, that which reminds me of discussing the dairy meals too. So thank you for that. The reason why they want the meal to be dairy on Purim by night is because we don't want you to confuse it and think that that's the main Purim meal. You fasted and then you lay in the Megillah, you go home and eat a meal. If it's going to be a meat meal, then people are going to think that is the main Purim meal. It's not. There's no requirement to eat bread on Purim by night. And so therefore they make it dairy that acts as a reminder that, this is not the main meal. Which brings us to, and this is a common question this year because it's Erev Shabbos, can the meal be dairy? And do you have to actually wash? So the answer is halachically, dairy meal is okay, and you don't have to wash. But it is strongly preferred to eat a meat meal on meat or the minimum chicken on Purim, and it's strongly preferable to at least wash and eat an egg's worth of meat. Just having bread and then have meat together. Like I tell people, and many won't want to hear this, but when you start going to a dairy wedding, then we could start discussing having dairy meals on Purim, right? And it should be at least as chashuv to us as a wedding. And as far as I know, most weddings are not dairy because it would be most people would get quite offended if you serve them dairy by a wedding. So when we're having a meal to celebrate miracles for Hashem, it should certainly have with at least the chashivas of a wedding. So therefore, we should make sure to have meat. Because having guests at the Suda count in Mishlach Manas, theoretically, you can even have more. You can have poor people. You could have a poor person, and then you can have all the mitzvahs together at the meal. Yes, theoretically, you could do that, but you want to make sure that you give it to them. So if you, I guess, end up passing them the food, maybe that works as giving them, but theoretically that would work. But again, at least give one to make sure that you give at least one in the proper normal way. My brother-in-law told me over Shabbos that his parents used to live in the same building as Rabbi and Cutler. And the basic way Shalach Manas worked then was that they took a piece, after davening, came home, took a piece of cake and a fruit, sent it upstairs to Rabbi and Cutler, and he took it. And I think he sent it back down, and that was the end of Mishlach Manas back then. Obviously, that was right after the war, and unfortunately, weren't that many Yidden around. But that's the way they did it. It was the Gedolei Adar that did this. Yeah. Okay. So now another question: if the family wants to have a Suda right after the Megillah, what should the woman do? Right. So that's what I was referring to before. The woman can snack a little bit, but if she hasn't yet heard the Megillah, she certainly should not wash. She should not wash, snack a little bit, and partake in it, and then go to the meal, and then hopefully everybody will wait for her to come back to continue the meal. But you cannot wash before you hear the Megillah. Even if you were, by the way, I don't think I said this before. That's even if somebody was not fasting, even if a woman was not fasting, right? That doesn't mean you're absolved from this halacha. You cannot. Once it hits shkia, you should stop eating. Also sleeping, I don't think I mentioned that either. Taking a nap once after sunset, you would not be able to sleep because we're afraid you're going to sleep through the whole night and not do the mitzvah. Okay, I don't know why I have in my head I want to discuss other things, but I can't think about it right now. I can't remember that now. So if there's no more questions. Okay. So in Al Hanisim, let's just discuss that because a lot of people ask that. Al Hanisim obviously has to be said in the davening. If you forgot Al Hanisim, then you do not have to repeat davening. Not by Ma'ariv, not during the day. If you forget it during Birchas Hamazon, we're in the proper place, and you can say it in the Harachamans. You can add it in. Also, Shabbos clothing should be worn. For some reason, I think women, I don't think the minig is that women get dressed in Shabbos clothing, but men certainly should. If you have bar mitzvah kids or kids that are going to be going to Megillah, so some people dress up for it, but we're supposed to really be wearing Shabbos clothing for the Megillah. And okay, obviously you don't want to ruin your Shabbos clothing, especially this year, so then you could change afterwards, but it's a Yom Tif and it's supposed to be wearing Shabbos clothing. Also, candles. Whenever there's a Sudas mitzvah, a lot of people are not aware of this. Candles should be lit. When it's a bris, candles should be lit. That's why when they walk to the chuppah, chassan and kala, that's why there's candles, which is very interesting because they put out the candles by the chuppah, which I saw from Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He says that's incorrect. They walk down to the chuppah. That's nothing. The candles should be lit under the chuppah. Okay, that's a different story for a different time. But during the meal, Purim by night, and certainly Purim by day, there should be candles. You should have a candle, at least one candle lit, because that shows, right? When you go to a fancy restaurant or fancy weddings and all, there's always candles lit because that shows that there's something chashuv, going on. If it's a sakana because there's men jumping around and dancing and they can make a fire, so then put it out, but at least have it on for part of the meal. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Hold on. Let me see any more questions. So should you be paras mappa? I would say it's better not to. It's better to avoid it. Again, if you're in the middle of your meal and you have no choice, then you have to. Then you have to do paras mappa if you want to continue eating, and it's already shkia. Now, if you paras mappa, I sent out this week instructions exactly how to do paras mappa. You could text me privately if you have my text, and I can resend it to you of the directions of exactly how to do paras mappa. But if you did not, the best way if you paras mappa, meaning again paras mappa is that if you say kiddush in the middle of your meal. So if you do that, then if you have a kezayis of bread after nightfall, not after sunset, meaning 40 minutes after shkia, if you have a kezayis of bread, then the best thing to do would be to say ritzei in benching and then say al hanisim in harachaman. The reason that you have a problem is because is it Purim? Once you're benching Friday night. So normally on Purim, most people's meals start during the day and end at night. That's not an issue because you could say al hanisim, but on Shabbos, you have a problem. If you're saying al hanisim, then it's Purim. If you say ritzei, then it's Shabbos. So which one is it? Is it Shabbos or Purim? It's not the same. So you have a problem. So basically, the best thing to do is say ritzei and then say the al hanisim and arachman. But again, you only say ritzei if you have challah after nightfall, which you should do anyways because of Shabbos, and this applies to anybody making early Shabbos too. If you make early Shabbos, it's preferable to make sure you eat at least some challah after nightfall, which can be more towards the end of your meal, if maybe even after your meal, or at least some cake to have it at night. Yes, taking a hot shower Friday morning, that counts. That does count. But if you get all sweated up and dirty and all that, so then maybe that negates it. Yes, Shabbos clothing does apply to night. You don't need two candles. One candle is really enough. I think just the minhag is that you put two candles on the table, but I don't see why there should be any requirement for two. Even one candle would be enough. Okay, I hope that's enough. I hope I covered everything. Okay, we should be zeicha that this should be. I mean, Purim is the one the Yom Tov we say is going to be here even after Mashiach comes, but hopefully Mashiach will be here even for this Purim, and we'll still have to celebrate it. And everybody should be healthy and gesund. Good luck.